Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner, place where we talk about everything that is geek, comics, movies, TV, and video games. And as you know, since this month marks the release of the new movie Man of Steel, all this month we've been doing everything about Superman this month. And last week we talked about some of probably the best and worst Superman movies ever, and I hope by now y'all have seen Man of Steel, and I hope it was very good. And this week we're going to be talking about what I think are some of the best and worst Superman stories ever done in comics. And I said all these 75 years of Superman being around, there's been a lot of really good classic stories, and of course there have been some lackluster ones too. And this week I've come up with what I think are the top 5 best and top 5 worst stories ever done in the whole history and in the history of Superman. But keep in mind, some of these are in continuity and some of these are out of continuity, Elseworld stories. And start off things with number 5. I'm going to start off with what I think are the best stories ever told in some of my favorites actually in the history of Superman. And number 5, so I think number 5 is Superman's Secret Identity. I mean, this is a really good story. And if I could, and I said I don't, and so I've never seen Superman done like this before. I mean, it's a real world version. It's almost like they call it real world instead of Elseworld. It's like real world, Elseworld. I mean, it's like, what if a kid named Clark Kent, who always been always been picked at with like the whole Superman thing, like always been giving Superman stuff for his birthday or Christmas and stuff like that. He pretty much, just because his name is Clark Kent, he always do basically the butt of Superman jokes. And basically in the end, and he just like he eventually gets tired of it, and then one night he happens to be out in the woods camping out, and all of a sudden he wakes up in the middle of the night from a dream, and suddenly he is Superman. He has all the powers and abilities of Superman, and he suddenly decides to start. And he suddenly decides, and in finding out that he really is Superman, he embraces it. And he wears a costume he was given one year. I'm essentially summing up issue 1. He becomes Superman. You might say he dresses up as Superman for a Halloween party, and he starts and basically he just goes as basically he starts doing. I guess he starts doing like a few good deeds around town or whatever. I need to go over it. I can't tell you the truth. But in the end, he goes to a Halloween party dressed as Superboy, and he goes to saving folks. And there's a woman that has become, by that time, in the course of the issue, becomes so obsessed with saying, he's mine, I'm going to report on him and everything. And in the end, he found out he knows who it was. So he makes himself all of a sudden look like he's a fake. And makes the woman look bad. And basically makes it trying to throw everybody off the trail a little bit and keep his identity safe. And then by the next issue, he's moved to Metropolis. Not Metropolis, New York City. You might as well say he is Metropolis, essentially. He moves off to the big city, becomes a newspaper reporter and everything. And he is still Superman. And he might as well he meets his Lois later on in the issue. Her name ain't Lois Lane, but she's the victim of the whole Clark Superman thing, the whole Clark Lois thing. But eventually they hit it off and they start becoming a pair. And somewhere in the course of the issue he's captured. And in the course of the issue he's captured by the government and everything. And kind of spooks him a little bit. He sees all these. He he's become a subject, basically. And basically by the end he does escape and he goes off with Lois and basically they become a couple. And basically, just the whole course of the series goes over his life of being Superman. And they show in the end he's had kids and all that stuff. And to me, it's a really good issue. It's a really good story. And when it first came out, I never had the opportunity to read it, but when I finally did, it was really good. I mean, it's like what if a real person did gain the powers of their comic book namesake? I mean, it's a really good. I mean, it's like every kid's dream to wake up with those kind of powers, and to me, and it's really good, and that's why it's number 5 on my list. And number 4 on my list is Elseworld story that folks have been trying to do for years, even since the Cold War. Superman Red Sun. It's one of them things people thought about for years. What if Superman not landed in Smallville, Kansas, USA? What if he landed somewhere like Soviet Union, Russia? And that's what that story focuses around. What if he landed in the middle of the Soviet Union and was raised up to be the perfect little communist? And over the course of the series, he eventually takes control of Russia and eventually the world. You might as well say. I mean, he has run in with Batman and Wonder Woman, and becomes his ally and everything. He basically has run-ins with everybody, even Brainiac and Luthor. Luthor essentially becomes his greatest enemy, but becomes America's greatest champion. You might as well say. And eventually they do it back and forth and everything. And the end is a real twist. I mean, it's a really neat twist. I never would have thought of doing it like that. But I'm not going to say what it is. You have to pick it up. I don't want to spoil anything for you like I probably did with Secret Identity, but but just go pick it up. I recommend. It's definitely worth checking out. And number 3 on my list is a story I probably mentioned the last one. Is one of my favorite Superman movies. It's also one of my favorite Superman stories. One of my favorite Superman stories, All-Star Superman. And as I said before, I had a few gripes with the movie and that they cut out a few issues, like the 2-part issue where he goes to Bizarro World and Bizarros invade Earth and he ends up trapped in Bizarro World with like the only intelligent being there, which is essentially a Bizarro. They call him a Bizarro, but his name's Zabaro. And then the issue where they dig up from the underworld black kryptonite that affects Superman by making him almost like a Bizarro. I mean, dumb and yet mean at the same time. And Jimmy has to essentially turn himself into Doomsday to stop him. And so there's at least a couple other issues of worth of stuff that's cut out, like the last day he saw his dad alive and everything like that. I mean, it was the whole issue was interesting. I wish they'd have done some of them little sidebar issues in the movie, but I know how they have to streamline movies for instead of streaming off the regular, instead of getting off the beaten trail and confusing people. They just want to streamline everything, where it's just like one story. But the whole comic series unto itself, even though it deviates from the main story here or there, it all connects. But it's still one of the best Superman stories I've ever read, and I highly recommend it. I ain't gonna spoil anything. I ain't gonna spoil any of the major stuff in it, but still, it's a very good story, and I'd go pick it up. And number 2 on my list is a story is a very good one. It was put out by the time Smallville was just getting started. It's Superman Birthright. I mean, it essentially retells his origin with more of a modern take on it. And to me, it was really good. I mean, it shows how he gets the suit, him traveling the world, him becoming Superman, and all that stuff and everything. It's basically it had a Smallville feel to it, and to me, that's what makes it so good, because I like Smallville so good. And to me, it was a really good story, and I highly recommend that one too. I said, go pick it up, go read it. I'm not going to spoil any detail, because any detail out of that is a spoiler, and it's really good, and I suggest you go pick it up. And number 1, I think, is the best Superman story ever told, and I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me, but I think it's the best Superman story ever told, and that's The Death of Superman. I mean, Superman Doomsday can't do it justice. I mean, the whole death, funeral, and return of Superman story is awesome. particularly the death part, because it is like 7 issues of fight. I mean, he probably comes in maybe a couple of issues later in the fight and starts fighting him. But it is one of the best slug matches slug outs I've ever seen with Superman do. And the fact in the end he lays down his life to end Doomsday. And I know that's I mean, to beat death of Superman, that's the spoiler right there. But the fact he lays down his life and to protect the city from him and to end him, that makes it awesome. And I said, I'd go pick it up. Go pick it up. It's an awesome story. When I tell you cannot do it justice, go pick it up. And that's why I think it's a great. To me, it's the best Superman story ever written. Go pick it up. And as I said before, with the best come the worst. And here, what I think is the 5 worst Superman stories ever wrote. And number 5, start off things. Number 5 is a Jim Lee is the Brian Azzarello Jim Lee story for Tomorrow. I mean, the artwork, it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than Jim Lee. He does great artwork, but the story was confusing. Starts off everywhere, people disappearing. I mean, it's just goes all over the place. It's all over the chart. This, that, and the other, and yet you're still supposed to figure out what will happen to everybody. And eventually, he finds out, and he's trying to come to find out it's the Phantom Zone. Everybody's been swept up because of his contingency plan that he created. Turn the Phantom Zone into a place where he could evacuate people to in the event Earth faces destruction like Krypton. But the one who winds up messing it up is none other than General Zod. Well, I don't know about General, but you might as well say it is General Zod. It's the Jim Lee iteration of Zod, which to me looked pretty awesome. He looked like a knight, or like the Black Knight, or a samurai, or something. And that's who wound up starting all that mess. And in the end, the whole world, everybody was evacuated back to Earth, and it all started with the whole world falling to pieces. And it all wound up with that whole world falling to pieces, and he ended up having to get a new fortress because his fortress was destroyed. And his fortress wound up getting destroyed in the course of that, and he wound up having to change his fortress to somewhere in South America, I think it was. But that didn't last long. But it was okay to see some of the action in it, but to me, it was just dull. And they should have done better than that to be worthy of their artwork. And that's why that's number 5 on the list. Number 4 on the list is the start of my stomping into the ground of their new Krypton stuff. And it starts off with World Without Superman. I mean, how in the world can you have 2 Superman books and Superman not even be in either one of them? It's all connected with that new Krypton stuff. I mean, first you got Flamebird and Nightwing. Nightwing winds up being his son that disappeared during the whole Last Son story that Jeff Johns and Richard Donner did. He disappears in the Phantom Zone. Somehow he winds up reappearing again, but as a teenager this time. Somehow he's aged to being a teenager, and I don't think I ever saw an explanation of how that happens, but I guess they explained it somewhere or another. But to me, that was Action Comics. And in Superman, they had the Daxamite from the future, Mon-El, his Daxamite friend that comes back from the future, cured of lead poisoning. He called Mon-El because he thought it was another Kryptonian. He had him coming back from the future to essentially sit in for a pinch hit and sit in for Superman while Superman was off messing around on New Krypton. And to me, I just couldn't read it. I couldn't read that. I was like, what's the point of having a Superman book with no Superman? That got old after a while. It got old really quick, and I never read it. And number 3 on the list is what resulted in number 4 on the list, and is New Krypton. The result of why he ended up with with World of Superman was number 4. New Krypton it started off with something good. I mean, he saved all those people. He essentially saved the lost city of Kandor from Brainiac. He saved it from Brainiac, and it just and they drug that one out way too long. I mean, it started off good in the beginning, but then it started off the whole mistrust by the Earth. They started off a whole war with them and their whole conflict with them. They had to go get their own planet. They wound up with a new Krypton, all this stuff, and wound up kind of orbiting there right with Earth and stuff like that. And I said, it just got old after a while. I mean, when you got Superman leave his own comic, and I mean, it ruined a bunch of comics. I mean, it ruined the Superman title, it ruined Action Comics title, it ruined Justice League. I mean, during Justice League, I mean, you had Superman leaving for New Krypton, you had Wonder Woman going back to Themyscira, and you had Batman was dead at the time. And who you had take over? Mon-El, or later on wound up being Supergirl, Donna Troy, and Dick Grayson as Batman. Interesting, but no. I want the real Justice League. And then that's it. But like I said, you had Superman leaving Earth to deal with New Krypton, and in the end, you had this whole War of the Superman thing, last stand on New Krypton, last days of New Krypton. I think essentially in the end, the lost city of Kandor became lost permanently because they destroyed it. I'm just saying right now, they destroyed it, and it ended up blowing up. I don't know how it happened. I don't know if it was Brainiac, Earth, whatever. It wound up blowing up. In other words, Krypton was lost twice. And they wound up having to deal with the ramifications of that. And it wound up leading into another bad story, which I'm going to talk about now. Number 2 on my list, Grounded. I mean, after that whole New Krypton thing ended, Superman came back to Earth. And he decided he'd been amongst his people so long, he wanted to go back amongst the Earth people. So what does he do? Instead of flying around everywhere, he decides to walk all over America. He decided to walk from city to city all over America, essentially looking like he's campaigning for president of the United States. I was like, nobody wants to read that. I tried doing that. I tried reading the first issue. I was bored to tears. So you finally bring Superman back to Earth, and what does he do? He walks around the country like he's campaigning for president. Dull, dull, dull. I'm sorry, it's just dull. And also the fact that at the same time you had Lex Luthor taking over Action Comics. And listen to he had the story Reign of Doomsdays happen, and then that took over essentially. But like I said, it's just dull. The Grounded story was just absolutely dull. It put a cup of coffee to sleep. I'm going overboard, but still, it's just dull, and that's why I feel that all those 3 stories line up 4, 3, 2. They're all just boring, and it just ain't even worthy of being Superman stories. It's just dull. And number 1 on my list, which I think is the worst Superman story of the last several years, is the first story from the New 52 that they did in the relaunched Superman title. I mean, you know how often I bash New 52 on here, and I said, I read the entire first Action Comics story. It was good until they, and I will say it was okay until they turned him into the fake in the armor. So they give him the armored suit. It was okay. It reminded me of a Golden Age Superman story until he started wearing that armor. When he got that suit, everything that was Superman got erased. And that doesn't completely destroy that story, but what does... that story in Action Comics, but the first story they ever released in the relaunched Superman title, in which all he did was wear the armored suit. It was confusing as all get out. First it's a fire creature, then it's some kind of a lizard creature that's invisible, then some kind of ice creature and everything. They all attack him at the same time. They climb like he created them, and then all of a sudden he disappears into space, and then there's this other Superman running around claiming to be him, and then he comes back to Earth with him in his arm, and him tucked under him like a sack of potatoes, sack of laundry or potatoes or something like that. I said it was just didn't make no sense. It really didn't make no sense. I just got confused all get out, and I didn't even read it. Of course, by then I was already getting disgusted with the New 52 anyway, so I really lost interest. I said, and I just think that was one of the worst Superman stories ever wrote. I'm sure there's probably worse than the New 52, but that one just confused the snot out of me, and I just didn't like it at all. I mean, there's worse ones. I mean, there's the one there's the remainder of that one wrote by Grant Morrison, where Superman switches over being reported Clark Kent to Johnny Clark, firefighter, and then Lois getting hit with a fire truck, and she getting open surgery done on her with his thumbnail and mess, and then he ditches, and then he lets that secret identity get killed and goes back to being Clark Kent again. I mean, it was just stupid. I mean, like I said, the New 50. I'm gonna say it at the end of everything I did. I'm gonna say in the end, the New 52 is stupid, and you might as well say number one on the list ain't just that Superman story. It's the New 52. Period. It's New 52. Period. When it's got to do with Superman, it's the New 52. Period, and I'm gonna say that particularly was one of the worst. It's probably the worst story. But if you look at the New 52 altogether, that is the worst story ever told in the history of Superman. Is the New 52, and that's all I gotta say about that particularly. So, what do y'all think? Are any of these your favorite stories? Did I miss one? Or do any deserve to be on? Is there any that particularly deserve to be on the best list or worst list? Or was your favorite? What do you think is the best Superman story ever written, or the worst one ever written? As always, drop me a comment in the comment box. That's it, and always drop me a comment box. And I guess that's all for this week's edition of Mr. J's Geek Corner. Next week we wrap up Superman month. And as always, leave me a comment in the comment box. If you have any ideas, if you have any ideas for what you want to hear me talk about, I'm always open to new ideas. I'm always looking for new stuff to talk about. If there's anything you want me to hear me talk about, just leave me a comment. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear from y'all. And I guess that's it for this week. And I'll see y'all then.